So now we're going to discuss your lab report and your individual investigation a little bit more closely. Now that you understand how the water is moving in and out of the egg based on the concentration of water, you can start thinking about how different types of solutions might affect osmosis in the egg itself as well. So you have gone through procedure A already. That's what we just talked about. Again, that was to give you the background of how water moves. You did the corn syrup, you did the water, you have an idea of how the egg can gain and lose mass. Now what we're really concerned about is your procedure B. So last night you put your egg into some liquid of your choice, and you are measuring it today to see how that liquid affected the mass of the egg. So if the mass of the egg decreased, that means that water went out of the egg. If the mass of the egg increased, that means water went into the egg. So that's basically what you're going to be looking at, is how did osmosis affect the mass of the egg based on this new liquid that you're looking at. So you've thought about question 1 already, obviously. What liquid are you adding to your egg, and discussed that. Then you've got your parts of your lab report that need to get addressed based on that liquid that you added. And maybe now that'll make a little bit more sense now that you know what's going on with osmosis. So I'd like to step you through the lab report. As I told you, there is a guide online as to how to write a lab report. And so I'm going to go through that guide online, and I'm also going to show you a kind of sample lab report, how you'd set that up on your Google Docs document. Even though you've started it, and I'm sure you're very close to this, I want to make sure that you have everything exactly right before we move on. So first, where this document is, if you haven't been there yet, if you go to my website and general links, there is a link that says lab report format. This is used for all of my classes as well as all of Mrs. Fast's classes. So hopefully this looks a little familiar to you. You click on that, it's going to download a document for you that is in Word format. So you can copy and paste this if you would like to, so you've got your format right there. I'm going to open this up, and here's how it breaks it down. You can see that each of the headings are bolded and underlined with a colon at the end. That's how you're going to do your headings as well. And then underneath each heading, it tells you what you need to write about. So we're going to go through these one at a time. First of all, it talks about your title. The title has to address the purpose or the problem, as well as the dependent variable. What are you measuring? Again, any organisms that you're testing, in this case we're using a chicken egg, so we need to mention that as part of our report. So I'm going to go back to my sample lab report. You see how I have all my headings set up already? Bolded, underlined, colon. And right underneath, just like it shows in that lab report format, I'm going to put my title. Now, to help you out, because you haven't done a whole lot of lab report titles so far, you're going to want to start with, the easiest one for this lab is the effect of, and then you fill in whatever your solution is. So the effect of Mountain Dew, or the effect of milk, or whatever you decided to add on, and here's your dependent variable, here's what we're measuring, in a shell-less chicken egg. And that tells us what our organism is that we're testing. Alright, so again, the blanks are for you to fill in here. You have to put in your liquid that you chose, and then you have to decide what is it we're actually measuring in this investigation. I'm going to leave that up to you to figure out. I think you can handle that. This is the dependent variable, the one that we measure. Your liquid that you put in, your own individual liquid that you decided on, is what's called the independent variable. That's the one that you controlled or changed. So there's your title all set up. Now we're going to go on to the question. Let's see what the rubric says about the question that we need to do. It says, state the purpose of the lab in the form of a question. We're going to answer this question. Make sure to expand on any objectives. And I did put objectives for you in the original guideline that I gave you. So again, let's think of what the question is. Our question is related directly to our dependent and independent variables. So we just want to kind of rework the title into a question at this point. Does, again, whatever your liquid is, increase or decrease the mass of a shell-less chicken egg? That's really what we're going to figure out through doing this experiment, right? Okay, we're trying to figure out what effect that particular solution you're using has on osmosis. And how do we measure osmosis? Well, a decrease or increase of mass, because that's the movement of the water that we're seeing. Okay, on to the prediction and hypothesis. Back to our guideline. Prediction and hypothesis, what do you think is going to happen? So do you think your egg will gain or lose mass? And then why do you think that? So the prediction is what do you think is going to happen. The why is the hypothesis. So that's something that you have to consider as you're writing this out. So let's start by saying, I think that the egg will, and then you decide, is it going to gain or lose mass? So you fill that in. So I think the egg will gain mass. I think the egg will lose mass. Because, and now here's where you use some of that knowledge of osmosis. Okay, if you think your liquid is hypertonic, in other words, you think it is more concentrated sugars or salts or solids or something in it, and the egg is going to be watery compared to your liquid, then you would say something like, because the egg is hypotonic to the solution, or whatever it is you put in there, right? If you think the egg has lots of water compared to the outside of the egg, that means it's hypotonic. If you think your solution is very watery, and the egg has more stuff dissolved in it, then your egg is hypertonic. So you have to use your vocabulary here in describing your prediction. So I'm going to start you off and leave it blank again. So I think that the egg will, again, gain or lose mass because the egg is, and this is where you put in hypotonic to, and then whatever your solution is. So if you did orange juice, you'd put in orange juice. So just throwing something out there, I think the egg will gain mass because the egg is hypertonic to orange juice. That would be your prediction and hypothesis, what you think is going to happen and why. Now on to your materials. Let's look at the lab outline again to see what has to be in the materials. For your materials, you need all the materials you've used for part B of your experiment. Okay, so this is just for your solution. If there's concentrations of things or scientific names for things, you need to put those in there as well. So let's go through that together. Some of the things you may have used that you want to consider. You've got a plastic cup. You've got a shell-less chicken egg. You're using weigh boats. And I'll let you go on from there. Okay, you get the idea? It's just a list typed out in a sentence, I guess not in a sentence, in a line, okay, of all the different things you've used.